Scarlett dropped the crayon drawing as if it had burned her fingers, watching it flutter to the floor between her and the 6-year-old boy. The crude sketch showed a woman with long dark hair and green eyes, wearing the exact same vintage cameo necklace her dead sister used to wear. The boy looked up at her with knowing eyes that seemed far too old for his small face and whispered, "She told me you'd come today. She said you'd be wearing blue." Scarlett looked down at her blue cardigan, the one she'd grabbed without thinking that morning, and felt the room spin around her. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button and subscribe to hear what happens next. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? 3 weeks earlier, Scarlett had been going through the motions of her life like a ghost. At 32, she worked as a grief counselor, helping others process loss while burying her own pain so deep she'd almost forgotten it was there. 5 years had passed since her sister Abigail died in a car accident, and Scarlett had built walls so high around her heart that even she couldn't find the way in anymore. She volunteered at the Sunshine Foster Care Center every Tuesday, telling herself it was about giving back, but really, it was about punishing herself for still being alive when Abigail wasn't. That particular Tuesday, Diane Mercer, the social worker, greeted her with an unusually serious expression. "We have a new arrival today. 6-year-old boy named Lucas. His grandmother just passed away. She was his only family. He hasn't spoken much since he got here 3 days ago." When Scarlett entered the room, Lucas turned his head slowly toward her. Their eyes met and something inexplicable passed between them, a recognition that made no logical sense. The boy's face transformed from blank sadness to relief, like a sailor spotting land after weeks at sea. "You came," Lucas said softly, his first words in days. "She said you would." Scarlett knelt down to his level. "Hi, Lucas. I'm Scarlett. Who said I would come?" The boy tilted his head, studying her face with unsettling intensity. "My other mom. The one who's not here anymore. She visits me at night and tells me things." Diane shot Scarlett a concerned look, clearly thinking the child was processing his grandmother's death through imagination. But something in Lucas's steady gaze made Scarlett's skin prickle. "Your grandmother?" Scarlett asked gently. "No," Lucas said with the patience of someone explaining something obvious. "My other mom. She's younger. She has long dark hair like yours and she smells like purple flowers. She told me a lady with sad green eyes would come for me, and that I should trust her." The breath caught in Scarlett's throat. Abigail had always worn lavender perfume. It had been her signature scent since high school. Over the following weeks, Scarlett found herself returning to the center more frequently than her schedule required. She couldn't explain the magnetic pull she felt toward Lucas. The boy attached himself to her immediately, following her around, always wanting to sit next to her, holding her hand with a trust that seemed to have no origin point. During their 4th session together, Lucas pulled out his drawings. Children in foster care often expressed their feelings through art, so Scarlett expected the usual sketches. What she didn't expect was the collection of images that made her blood run cold. The first drawing showed a treehouse with a specific broken plank on the left side and a red ribbon tied to a branch. Scarlett had built that treehouse with Abigail when she was 10. The broken plank had been there since a storm in 2003. She'd never mentioned it to anyone. The second drawing depicted a beach with distinctive rock formations and a small cross made of stones. It was the exact beach where she and Abigail had scattered their parents' ashes 12 years ago. "Where did you see these places, Lucas?" Scarlett asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "My other mom showed me," he said simply. "She shows me lots of things in my dreams. She said these are important to you. She wanted you to know she remembers too." "Lucas, what else does this other mom tell you?" The boy looked up at her with those ancient eyes. "She sings me a song." And then he began humming a melody that punched through Scarlett's chest like a fist. It was a lullaby their grandmother used to sing, a folk song that Abigail had recorded before their grandmother died. Scarlett still had that recording, but she'd never played it for anyone. That night, Scarlett couldn't sleep. She paced her apartment, trying to rationalize what was happening. Coincidence, imagination. But the details were too specific. At 2 in the morning, she called Marcus Donnelly, Abigail's widower. They met at a coffee shop the next day. Marcus looked older than his 36 years, grief etched into the lines around his eyes. "This is going to sound insane," Scarlett began, and then told him everything about Lucas. Marcus listened without interrupting, his face growing paler with each detail. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his wallet and pulled out a small, worn photograph. It showed Abigail, radiant and glowing, holding a pregnancy test. "This was taken 2 days before the accident," Marcus said, his voice rough. "She was 3 months along. We were going to tell you that weekend." The world tilted on its axis. Scarlett gripped the edge of the table. "I didn't know. I never knew. I couldn't bring myself to tell you after she died. It seemed cruel." Marcus's eyes were wet. "Scarlett, we'd already picked out a name if it was a boy. We were going to call him Lucas." The coincidences were piling up too high to ignore. That evening, Scarlett asked Diane to pull Lucas's file. She needed to know more about his grandmother, about where he'd come from. "His grandmother was Helena Pritchard," Diane said, "former nurse. She retired about 5 years ago after some kind of personal crisis, moved to a small town upstate and lived quietly until she died of a heart attack last month." Scarlett's heart was pounding. "Which hospital did she work at?" Diane checked the records. "Mercy General." "Why?" Mercy General was where Abigail had died. The next day, Scarlett drove 3 hours to the storage facility, where Helena Pritchard's belongings had been kept. The unit was small, containing only a few boxes of personal items and a trunk filled with papers. Scarlett spent hours going through everything. At the bottom of a box of nursing memorabilia was a hospital bracelet that read, "Winters Abigail," and below it, a water-damaged journal with only one legible entry. The date was the day Abigail died. The handwriting was shaky. "If anything happens to me, someone needs to know the truth about what I witnessed today. The young woman in the accident, 3 months pregnant, she made me promise as she was dying. She said, the rest was destroyed by water damage. But paperclipped to that page was a small ultrasound photo and a post-it note that simply said, 'I kept my promise.'" Scarlett sat in that storage unit and cried for the first time since Abigail's funeral. The pieces were falling into place in a pattern that defied logic but felt undeniably true. Helena had been there when Abigail died. Abigail had asked her for something, made her promise something. And somehow, impossibly, Lucas was connected to all of it. When Scarlett returned to the foster center, she found Lucas waiting for her in their usual spot by the window. He looked up at her arrival and smiled, the first real smile she'd seen on his face. "She told me you found the things," he said. "She said you understand now." Scarlett sat beside him, no longer trying to rationalize or explain. "Lucas, does your other mom still visit you?" "Every night." He nodded. "She says she couldn't be my mom in the real world, but she made sure I'd find the person who needed me most. She says you were supposed to be my aunt, but now you get to be something even better." "What does she say about me?" Scarlett whispered. Lucas reached out and took her hand. "She says you blame yourself for not being there the day she left. She says she needs you to know she was never mad. She says she forgave you before you even knew you needed forgiving. And she says she loves you, and she's been trying so hard to bring you back to life." The dam inside Scarlett broke. She pulled Lucas into her arms and held him while they both cried, grieving and healing simultaneously, in a way that transcended understanding. 3 days later, Diane approached Scarlett with paperwork. 2 families had expressed interest in fostering Lucas, but Lucas had made it clear he would only accept placement with Scarlett. Scarlett looked at the papers, then at Lucas playing quietly in the corner, and felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. "I want to foster him," she said. "I want to start the process." Diane smiled. "I thought you might say that." On Lucas's first night in Scarlett's home, she made up the guest room with fresh sheets covered in stars. Lucas stopped in front of a framed photo of Abigail that Scarlett kept on the bookshelf. "That's her," he said softly. "That's my other mom." Scarlett knelt beside him. Her name was Abigail. She was the best person I ever knew. She still is, Lucas said matter-of-factly. She's just different now. She says thank you for taking me home. She says I was always meant to be yours, even before I was born. That night, Scarlett drifted into a dream more vivid than any she'd ever experienced. Abigail stood in a field of lavender, looking exactly as she had before the accident, glowing with health and happiness. "You came for him," Abigail said, her voice clear as a bell. "I knew you would. I don't understand any of this," Scarlett cried. "How is this possible?" Abigail smiled, that brilliant smile Scarlett had missed so desperately. "Love doesn't die, Letty. It just changes form. I couldn't give birth to him, couldn't hold him or raise him, but I could guide him to you. Some souls make agreements before they're born. He was meant to heal you, and you were meant to save him. That's how love works. It finds a way. I miss you so much." Scarlett sobbed. "I know, but I'm not gone. I'm in every moment you choose love over fear. And now I'm in Lucas, in the way he loves you, in the family you're building. That's my gift to you, sister. A second chance at the life I wanted you to have." Scarlett woke with tears on her face and the faint scent of lavender in the air. She checked on Lucas and found him sleeping peacefully, a small smile on his lips. 6 months passed. Scarlett began the adoption process, and Lucas thrived. His nighttime visits from his other mom became less frequent, then stopped altogether. "She said her job is done. She said I'm home now and she can rest," Lucas explained. "She said to tell you she'll always be watching, but from further away now, like a star." On a sunny Saturday afternoon in the park, Scarlett sat on a bench watching Lucas play with other children. He was laughing, running, being the 6-year-old boy he was supposed to be. She felt a peace settle over her that she'd thought was gone forever. A monarch butterfly landed on her shoulder, its orange wings catching the light. Scarlett held perfectly still, remembering that Abigail had loved butterflies. Lucas looked back from the playground, not at Scarlett, but just past her, at the empty space beside her on the bench. His face lit up with recognition and joy. He waved, not the uncertain wave of a confused child, but the confident, loving wave of someone greeting a dear friend. Scarlett felt a warmth beside her, not physical but unmistakable. The butterfly's wings fluttered once, twice, then it lifted off and flew toward the playground. For just a moment, Scarlett could have sworn she felt a hand squeeze hers, could have sworn she heard Abigail's voice whisper, "Thank you for loving him, thank you for living again." Scarlett whispered to the air, to her sister, to the universe, "I love you too, Abby. Thank you for bringing him home. Thank you for bringing us both home." Lucas ran back to her then, throwing his arms around her waist, laughing about the butterfly and asking if they could get ice cream. Scarlett held him tight. This impossible gift, this child who was connected to her in ways that transcended biology and logic. As they walked hand in hand toward the parking lot, Scarlett realized the guilt she'd carried for 5 years had finally lifted. Abigail hadn't needed her forgiveness. She'd given it freely, completely, and had spent the years since her death ensuring that Scarlett could forgive herself. And in Lucas, she'd given her sister the greatest gift imaginable, a reason to love again, to hope again, to believe in the impossible. That night, as she tucked Lucas into bed, he looked up at her with sleepy eyes and said, "Mom, I'm glad she picked you." It was the first time he'd called her Mom. Scarlett's heart expanded so much she thought it might burst. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." She turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him drift off to sleep. The scent of lavender was so faint she might have imagined it, but she chose to believe it was real. She chose to believe that somewhere beyond the veil of this world, Abigail was smiling, finally at peace, knowing that the two people she'd loved most had found each other. Love, Scarlett had learned, doesn't die. It transforms. It persists. It finds a way to complete its mission, even across the boundary between life and death. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very broken and very open, it brings you exactly what you need in the most impossible package imaginable. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And remember, love always finds a way.